It's Game Boy World, and this is Boomer's Adventure in Asmik World. Can a game be a ripoff of another game when the game it's ripping off hasn't even been released yet? This is the existential paradox of Boomer's Adventure in Asmik World. With its puzzle action play revolving around digging holes with which to trap and destroy enemies, Boomer's Adventure will almost certainly remind you of Hyper Lode Runner seen from a top-down perspective. But the game owes a much greater debt to another Game Boy release, Meldak's Heiankyo Alien. But wait, you cry! We haven't seen Heiankyo Alien in this chronological series. How could Boomer's Adventure owe anything to a game that wouldn't be released until January 1990, several weeks after this title? This is a very on-point question, and we'll talk more about it in Game Boy World episode 29. For now, though, I will simply rue the fact that a difference of a few weeks in launch date means I can't simply explain Boomer's Adventure by referring you back to the Heiankyo Alien episode. So here's the rundown. Boomer's Adventure in Asmik World stars a young dinosaur, or dragon, or lizard, or something named Boomer, who waddles through a towering stack of dungeons, level by level. The stairway to each stage is shut off by a door, and you need to find a key to unlock the path forward. Aside from half a dozen boss battles, this is the goal of the game. Find a key and go to the next door. Unfortunately, this proves in practice to be less simple than it would sound. Keys are buried somewhere in the maze of each level, and Boomer has to dig them up in order to claim them. This would sound an impossible task, but it's really not so difficult. You can pick up a couple of tools to help you pinpoint the location of keys. A compass that will point in the direction of the key, and a locator that chirps whenever you walk over a buried object, and freaks out if said object is the level key. Plus, keys will always be buried in the same location with each replay, so once you've found a key, you'll always be able to dig it up from the same spot the next time around. So whether you search aimlessly or with tool assistance, Boomer can dig a pit in the ground wherever he likes. Unlike in Lode Runner, with its self-healing platforms, pits dug into the loam of Asmik World remain there until the stage ends, or until Boomer fills them in again. Complicating your quest for keys, because isn't that always the way, are a number of creatures that roam the maze and will ruin Boomer's day if you bump into them. Worms, crabs, praying mantises, something that looks weirdly like a quadrupedal cubert. They wander around, sometimes aimlessly, sometimes not, adding additional danger to your quest. Again, as in Lode Runner, you can give yourself some breathing room here by tricking these creatures into falling into holes. They'll wander haplessly into the pit you create, and you can either ignore them, in which case they'll eventually free themselves, or you can bury them by filling the pit, in which case they'll respawn from the entrance to the stage a few minutes later. Of course, Boomer can fall into his own pits, so it pays to be cautious. And while Boomer can become stuck in any pit, even one that's not completely dug out yet, enemies won't be fooled by partial holes. They'll fill in a half-dug hole and continue on their merry way. See, enemies can dig too, and they don't dig tactically the way Boomer does, but they can cover their own holes on their own, and they will pause to go foraging for items. Yes, these guys are trying to swipe your goods. It's entirely possible for creatures to unearth all the good stuff in a maze before you can get to it, including the all-important key to the next stage. Because mazes cover a space several times larger in each direction than the Game Boy's tiny screen can display, this means that enemies can and will dig up essential goodies while they're out of sight. But, it's okay, because if you manage to trap a creature in a hole, it'll drop whatever it's collected, and if an enemy is carrying around the key, the compass will still point to whoever is holding the key, rather than the spot where it was dug up. So there's a surprising amount of dynamism for a maze chase game where all the items are hidden in fixed locations, and a surprising amount of tactical possibilities available as well. Not only do you have to avoid enemies, you sometimes need to chase them down and trick them into falling into the pit you create, all while avoiding other creatures and within a strict time limit. You have other tools at your disposal as well. Roller skates, kind of like the jet shoes in Tower of Druaga, will allow Boomer to move about the stage more quickly, giving you a much needed advantage. You can also take on enemies directly, dig up a bone, and you can destroy an enemy by throwing it. A boomerang will do likewise with the benefit of taking out any enemies it hits on its return. And if you can catch it, you can even throw it a second time. All in all, what appears to be a fairly simple top-down trap-em-up has some fairly impressive layers of complexity. It even borrows a bit of inspiration from Rogue. Once you reach the top of the tower, the second half of the game sees you traveling back down to the entrance to escape, facing much more difficult variants of earlier stages. The one downside to Boomer's Adventure comes in the form of the boss battles, which are crazy hard. Bosses in this game are massive, powerful, mobile creatures, all things that Boomer is not. They also have extremely generous hitboxes, meaning they're quite capable of ruining your day very easily. Fortunately, you're given a password immediately before and after facing a boss, so their cheap patterns and attacks won't completely undermine half an hour's worth of progress. And once you've won, you don't have to face that boss again. While not exactly a masterpiece, Boomer's Adventure is a pleasantly well-made and entertaining puzzle action game, and given how many puzzle games have begun to appear on Game Boy at this point, any edge is welcome. Best of all, it's an interesting expansion on Heiankyo Alien, adding more abilities and tactics to that classic work. So while this isn't necessarily an essential entry into the Game Boy library, it's nevertheless an entertaining one even now, and, bosses aside, challenging without being needlessly frustrating too. For more Heiankyo Alien clones, and also Heiankyo Alien, keep reading GameBoyWorld.com.